Apologies for having to reach deep into the bench to get another moderator, but there was a last-minute sickness call at 3 a.m. in the morning. But thank you all for being here for, I can't even remember what year this is of Photoshelter, the seventh, one of those years of Photoshelter and Photoville combining together to produce these great Luminance talks for you. By a show of hands, how many of you make the majority of your income through photography? All right. So today we're talking about changing the game, creative ways to get noticed, and most importantly, make money through your photography. We have this incredibly talented, diverse, and pretty amazingly good-looking panel for you today. It's pretty stunning. It's pretty stunning. Yeah. So without further ado, I'm gonna each of the panelists will go ahead and introduce themselves briefly, and we'll get straight into the discussion. Yeah. So we'll start with Aundre here. Go for it.
I wasn't sure if I should bend forward. Hey, so thank you guys for coming. It's not the nicest day out, and effort is difficult because there's other cool things. So I just want to say thank you for coming. My name's Aundre Larrow. I'm a photographer. I just finished a residency with Adobe. I shoot all sorts of different kinds of stuff, but I moved to New York about 5 years ago, and the city's been really good to me. So I'm excited to sit and talk about all the nasty little ways that I figured out how to stay here for another month and then get a job and keep going. So that's it.
Hello, I'm Delphine. Yeah, I am. Wow. So I'm a photographer, visual artist, collagist. I've been doing photography full-time for 9 years. And it's pretty crazy adventure that to be a photographer as a freelance and deal with different clients, collectors. So my work can be very artistic. I can do exhibition and I can do also commercial, and I can be hired as consulting as well. And my work it's basically focused on women empowerment, portraiture. And through my eyes, I can digest another way of seeing women as a conscious being outside of their own body and objectification that the world of photography did create. Sorry, I have to say it. So then all the work that I implement, it's a journey to transformation of the psyche of a woman. And while I'm doing this, I need to make money. And so we're here to talk about this.
And she's from France. That you might have noticed
Yeah.
an accent.
Oui. A little bit of Senegal as well. Pleasure to meet you all.
Erick.
Good afternoon, guys. Thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure to talk in front of you guys. It's always nice sharing my joys and my struggles with people who can relate. And I always, whenever it comes to talking about photography, I can talk about this for days on. So you have to stop me if I get too deep into this. So I'm Erick. I go by Erick Urgiles. I'm a Sony ambassador. I do mostly commercial photography. I also started this community called We Levitate, and I developed this form of levitation technique without the use of Photoshop. And I'm humbled enough that has gotten me to partner up with a lot of cool brands who I never dreamt of working with. And I really hope to explore the conversation about how this came about and how I got to partner up with them on a very real and constructive way. I like to always stay real to my work. It is very hard to not sell out and make money. And so I've really gone through the struggles of a lot of the time saying no to a lot of big clients because the vision was just not there. And so it's always a good thing to start a conversation. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to, express what I need to express and hopefully educate you guys and learn from you guys how to move forward as photographers. Yeah, thank you.
And finally, Carson.
So, hi guys. I just want to say thank you guys for joining us today and allowing us to share our experiences with you. My name is Karsten. I'm a portrait and lifestyle fashion photographer. At the basis of it all, it's really all just portraiture. Basically, I'm a people person, so I can sit and talk with anyone, and I kind of use that to disengage my subjects and just hang out with them and capture some honest moments and then create moments in between. I've been shooting since about 2006. I actually got started in video. I grew up as a extreme athlete. I was a freestyle BMXer. So it's a little bit more popular it is these days than it was in the past. But it's actually what introduced me to just capturing all these adventures and documenting times with my friends. So thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone. I guess I want to start with kind of this question of, you know, there was a generation of photographers from maybe the 50s to the 90s where they had full-time staff positions, and the pathway to becoming a successful photographer was relatively well documented, which might usually include a staff position. You would create a portfolio, you might get an agent, you might publish in one of the regular trade magazines to get exposure. And now it's kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily the Wild West, but the opportunities are much more diverse. What clients are looking for in terms of the photographic output is much more diverse. Can you guys kind of shed some light into how you went about approaching being a professional photographer when you kind of first broke in, and what some of the first jobs were? Open question. Eric, let's start with you.
Let's do this.
Right?
So I came from an opera singing background. I sang until I was 20 professionally, and if you met me 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I could have told you I was going to be the next tenor in the world. But life happens, and I picked up a camera when I started this very small T-shirt brand with my best friend, and I picked it up for fun, and then I realized that I had this eye for it. And to be honest, I started just by finding myself. And the best thing that I can do, that I can recommend for amateur photographers is out there to go grab your camera and shoot anything and everyone and everything that's in front of you. Because one of those things is going to catch your attention and catch your feelings and catch your emotions in such a way that you're going to know that's what you want to pursue. In my case, believe it or not, I know it sounds like ridiculous, but my stuff is commercial photography, and I love expressing a story with a brand. So you just give me a ring, give me a watch, give me a shoe, and I just love expressing the story of that and connecting that to the consumer. So how did I start that? I feel like you have to go through putting in the work, and a lot of the times, especially in social media now, people think that you have 100,000 followers, like you made it. I think that it's a lot deeper than that. Sometimes you have to put in your 10,000 hours to develop your vision completely. And so I used to shoot for this company called Mo Sneaker Spot. So they are like kind of like a Foot Locker, and they would send me boxes of shoes every week to shoot between 13 pairs to 35 at times. And so I worked with them for about a year and a half, and I must have shot about 5,000 to 6,000 shoes before, quote unquote, working for these big brands or like making it, as they say. But it wasn't really. I don't look at myself as like, reaching out to these big brands. I find myself really organically connecting with them because of the work that I've done beforehand. So if I didn't work with this other, with Mo's shooting all these pairs of sneakers every week, just getting my work in and getting my vision in, I don't think I would have been able to establish these connections with other big brands. So start small and put in your work and develop your vision just so that you have a honed eye and people know what you're bringing to the table. And I think the conversation will start from then organically, I would say.
Delphine, you've had a lot of serendipity as a photographer, kind of being receptive to the universe, introducing you to different people.
It's completely the opposite of what you're going to talk about. like organically, like towards another dimension. No, because I'm 41, so it's my second job. I used to be a graphic designer and special effect artist and art director for 7 years in Paris for music industry. And I was mostly dealing with celebrities, artists, very demanding. And then I give up my job. I had an epiphany in Botswana in the middle of nowhere, and I saw a vision. So the other aspect of the vision outside of a school, then you can implement, you go to school, you learn about photography, you learn about all your skills that you need to do to be a photographer, but something's missing, right? The reason why it's missing is because the industry is full of photographers, right? I mean, if you take this from the 60s to 70s, people were like used to use camera, they have to have money, and you know, like here's kind of elitist. Like there's no digital cameras existing at the time. The digital, the good news is everybody has an eye, so everybody can play the game. But guess what? The games become way more complicated. Because if there is a lot of vision, what makes you unique? Only your brand or only options of working with the brand? It's like, this is a long process. The long process is like you want to expand your vision for 40 years to 60 years. And you know the competition today is huge. I'm not trying to compare myself to other photographers because I don't do the same thing because I'm unique. But I recognize the work of people. If they do, it's like great vision. I wake up in the morning, I implement the vision, I study, I expand the vision, and things happen to me organically. So the only thing that is the opposite is like I produce and I don't stop to produce. I'm a machine of production. Through my creative process, every week I create. And then the clients from art world to a commercial world, they come, and this is the right clients because they ask something that I did in my work. So you see the difference? It's like I'm aware when I wake up in the morning that there is good photographer out there, and I'm not trying to get the job that they want, because it's endless. You got more money, you know you get big deal, you get $50,000, $30,000 project. The magazine from the industry doesn't pay much, so I'm not really interested with editorial. It's a waste of time and energy, especially when you have to spend 7 days with the prep, an entire crew, and having everybody's paid, but you just like end up with no money. So I will say to you, it's like you have to deal with not be able to make money for a while. And that's what when I started my career, I knew I would be broke for a bit, like 3-5 years, because I didn't want to do the bad jobs. The bad jobs for me, it's like no vision. You say it before. So no vision, which means for you don't implement an extension of your vision for the future. If someone's used you, you know that next year is going to use someone else. So right now, it's a real game of the market and yourself as a creator. That's my answer.
Aundre, it used to be, at least in some photographic disciplines like photojournalism or sports, where you'd go to the event, you'd shoot, you'd dump your rolls of film, and you'd send it off, and you were done with the job. Nowadays, it seems like you have to do a lot more. You can't just take pictures. Can you kind of talk about the diversity of things you have to do to be a, quote, photographer nowadays?
Well, wait, okay, sorry. I thought I couldn't hear myself. I wanted to start by saying vision is a really good point, and you made a really good point about money. Photography has always been really dangerous because there's a lot of barriers to entry. Lenses are expensive, cameras are expensive, and when you do things like you shoot sports, like Skinny just finished shooting the US Open, that's really hard to just get the access to do that. And so when you're saying there's a lot of photographers, that there is a plus to that, and that now that we have the ability to express ourselves digitally a little bit easier, being able to kind of wade in is this like level of freedom that we didn't have previously, so that's really good. But the downsides are now you're not sending rolls off. If I'm shooting, like, I got to shoot the NCAA tournament in Madison Square Garden 2 years ago. The turnaround to edit that stuff and have it up, posted before halftime was over, is nuts. It takes like 5 minutes to walk in and out of the tunnel, first of all. So I think the things that are expected, it just really depends. So like, for example, Karsten and I work on this American Express job, and when we're there, we're expected we did 360 video at that hotel in Los Angeles. We took photos. We were expected there to like model in some of the things because they didn't want to pay a budget to get these other people. And a lot of times, like you're talking about for editorial, I basically just did a job at Costa earlier this week for a celebrity because I thought it'd be cool, and I left feeling like, okay, well, I just wasted my money, kind of. And it's not necessarily a bad thing all the time. I think that one of the biggest things that I wanted to address today is like trying to figure out where your value is. So like understanding that some things that you're doing are going to net you a negative, and some things are going to net you a positive, but the emotional positive and the emotional negative is valuable. But knowing when to say no when someone asks you if you can do 8, 30, 40 things, like, hey, you're shooting this, but while you're there, can you get video of this and do this and do this? Usually my question I'll ask myself is if I have to do all this other stuff, will it impact the first thing you hired me for? Because at the end of the day, if you're mad that I didn't get you what you wanted, then you're not going to hire me again. But the other stuff is cute. Like, it's cool for me to be able to like live stream or post somewhere and like things like that. But if the initial thing that you paid me for is it's going to be hindered in this thing, then I'm not going to do it. Or can we get another person or two? But the things that are asked are like, can you stream it when you shoot it? Then can you share it 1 million times? So they're asking you to make content for them and then make impressions for them. And that can be kind of tough because the audience that you have may be there because they like your work or something. They're not there to see, hear you talk about Old Navy 40 times. And I've never worked for Old Navy. I just want to make that clear. I'm just, as an example, I was an Old Navy clothes folder when I was like 14. So whenever I make jokes, that's where I go. But yeah, so I think that like that's the thing is like I always have to try to figure out like, is this going to make me like go crazy or do I have enough time to do it? But a lot of times, if they're already like discussing with you what you're working on, the likelihood of that being like, oh well, you can't live stream while you do this, they're not going to be like, yo, don't work for us anymore. And if they are, then you might not want to work with them. Right. Which is like a tough thing to say because saying no to stuff is really dangerous because people need money for their rent, for all sorts of things that come up, your healthcare, and all these different things. But that was the thing that I always try to do. And if I'm unsure, I'll usually call one of them and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And they'll be like, that's too much work for this amount of money. But yeah, I think game-wise, it's like when it's for that specific client, it's trying to figure out if what you're doing is actually worth it. And most of the time the answer is no, but if I'm already over there, then like I might just do it. I don't know.
Can I add a little bit to that?
Yeah.
You brought out so many good points, man. Thank you. I feel like we, as a community of photographers, we have to know our value, first of all, and what our value represents to the rest of the community. Because, there are cases in which, for example, big brands using their big brand name would approach someone who is just starting out and propose them, here's a few items in return for, your day rate, which normally in the market value speaking would be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 to even $50,000, and these kids don't know a lot of the time. And so I think it's up to us, the community, to educate one another and, for example, help each other with our prices. And that's something that everybody's always not open to talk about, which I think is super important, because at the end of the day, the market value is going to be the market value. And if we keep shading our prices, oh my God, how much do you charge for this rate? Like, for example, we're very open with our prices simply because we want to help each other out. I'm working with this big client. How much should I charge them? Is their budget $5,000? Is their budget $50,000? Is their budget free? And at times, when you look at certain things and you look at the market value of what their cost is, sometimes it makes sense to work for a little bit less than what you normally work for because the return is going to be a lot better. Let's say if Nike approached me and my day rate was a couple of thousand and then told me, hey, listen, it'll be something really quick, only for social media. Let's do it for like $600 or something. And if I was just starting out and if I needed a Nike check on my portfolio, I would kind of go for that, But it's all about give and take, but not really selling out full on. Because what happens is if you start working for free all the time, no one is really going to give you that $10,000 check that you deserve going forward, because they're only going to know you as a photographer who did it for free, and you don't want to be known as that. You want an even relationship with the brands, just so that they know they can work with you, and on top of that, they know that you know your worth. And if you're willing to work hard to really hone in your vision and find a caliber of work that stands on its own, brands would have no problem paying the price because they know it's quality stuff, So, and as long as you believe in your vision, I feel like they would also believe in your vision as well. And that's a big part of self-branding. And what I normally recommend to all my friends and to people that hire me as a consultant is, if you're a photographer, make a couple of different tiers of pricings. Here are my friend pricings, because we have to eat too. I love you, friends, but you need to, give us, if it's not something that's mutually beneficial, it should be paid for. It is work. You don't ask your dentist friend to give you a free appointment. It should be treated as such. So have your friend rates, have your small company rates, have your medium company rates, and then have your large company rates. And then just have a few bullet points as to what you will provide and the licensing and all that stuff accordingly, and the usage. And all that, because that's so important,
So many people forget about usage.
The usage and the license.
They ask you for a shoot, and they're like, licensing. I'm like, yes, this is actually more money.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
That's all you want.
And-
Whatever image you took that makes them a bunch of money,
They
that
can
image they need to license again
And
again.
you need to realize that the usage of a photograph can actually be more than your day rate. So if you're shooting something global for a global brand that's going to put it in subways, going to put it in stores, going to put it in billboards, your price just went from, let's say, $5K to $15 to $20 to $30,000 just based on the licensing alone. So be very aware to look into the licensing pricing, look into separating your feelings and your business, because business is a business and you should treat it as such. But also you shouldn't be unfair, and you wouldn't want to overcharge your clients because you want them to be with you and you want them to grow with you, but you should also not undercharge your clients, because then you're selling yourself short, and that does not look good as a professional photographer.
Hi guys, I just want to say that there's a great resource for pricing and negotiations. It's actually a Wonderful Machine. They have a blog, and they usually break down a lot of their microphone.
Can you repeat it? I need it too.
I'm sorry guys, I hear echo. All right, there's a website. It's called Wonderful Machine. Wonderful Machine. On their blog, it's called Pricing and Negotiations. So they actually show redacted PDFs of what cost estimates are. And I think it's a great resource. They also break down how they come up at the pricing and why they're going with certain clients and such.
Totally agree.
It's a great one. And then also, I just want to say that obviously, as a photographer starting out, sometimes you're going to do things for your portfolio, and sometimes you're going to do things for profit. So it's important that what you're doing for your portfolio is actually like a passion project. Those are going to be the things that you might not necessarily get paid for. You're going to come out of pocket for them. You're going to spend hours and hours just, culling images and getting, things together. And then you're going to do things for profit. And as Erick and Aundre and everybody else has stated, as you grow, your prices are going to grow too. And just going back really quickly, I just wanted to touch on what's the first step to just even becoming a professional photographer. It's just owning that word, right? It's a mental thing. So I would wake up in the morning and just say, I'm a photographer. Even though I worked at a 9 to 5 and I might have been doing clerical stuff or whatever the case might have been, when I had a conversation with someone, I had to own that. I'm a photographer. I wasn't going to talk about, being in an office and shifting papers around. But I knew that I had work that can also demonstrate what I was talking about. So I think just mentally, you just have to own that and get the ball rolling from there.
I want to go back to this usage fee idea, just so that we educate everyone in the audience who's not aware. So you'll all charge your creative fee, which is a day rate or a half-day rate, or maybe just itemized as a creative fee. How are you dealing with brands that are asking for social media usage? Is it based on impressions? Is it based on how many followers they have?
I think it's based on their marketing budget. So if you work with big footwear brands specifically, and you do there's different campaigns. Now they have the social media campaigns, and then they have the real campaigns that would go both on their in-store, as well as billboards, as well as social. So you need to be very aware of what their investment is to that marketing budget. Let's say Converse decides to release, the new sneaker, and they invested $200,000 for that marketing budget specifically within the North American market. So if you're doing it for the North American market, you need to divide that budget. And as he said, there's a lot of good online educational web pages that show you your pricing and how you should divide that. Let's say I think if it's more than $100,000, it's 1% or something like that, and then as it grows into smaller percentages. But it's only to be fair, because all these companies will be making money out of your images, and it all depends on how much they're willing to scale. If they're willing to scale those images and put them everywhere, then all of a sudden you're talking with $1 million budgets, and then the shoot would be very, very pricey. But it would only, it would equate. As I said, it's all about finding a balance and finding the fairness between you getting paid what you deserve and the company getting what they want and need from those pictures. So it depends.
Oh yeah, I do want to say that sometimes it's not actually the company that's trying to get over on images. Sometimes it's the agency. Because, obviously we all communicate. We're a pretty tight-knit community, and, we'll share things. If we can't do a job, we'll pass it on. Or if we just have a question about something, we'll ask our group. And I remember vividly, this email came over. It was a shoot for a pretty big mobile carrier. And the budget was $768. But that number doesn't even make sense. It's not rounded off to the top. It's just something really strange. And, so I passed it over to a friend who sometimes he would act as like an agent for me or a manager. And he replied back, and you basically got crickets. And what had happened was they sent that email out to about 20 people, starting from like the top down. Like what you would call like a top tier photographer who has like a massive social following or whatever the case is, all the way down to someone who's got, next to nothing but has great work. And the funny thing was they wanted so much that would have cost, probably $10,000 just for the day of like putting it together. They needed models, they needed a loft style space, they needed a Friendsgiving theme, so you had to buy food. And 700, you remember this one, right?
I forgot what it was.
Yeah, so the sad thing was, we did have a friend that ended up taking on that client, which we ended up helping him with that project because for him it looked good on his portfolio, but for that agency, that looked bad on their part because they're trying to take advantage of people who are definitely like hungry and not necessarily desperate, but it looks good on the resume. So sometimes you do things that will look good on the resume. It might hurt the industry slightly, but then those industries don't last because they're trying to get, the companies don't last because they're trying to get over on artists as well. So the word gets around pretty quick.
The thing to notice about that, I remember when we talked about this, we had this conversation. It was the first time I really understood it. You were like, you were talking on the phone. And you were like, think about the idea that like what they're paying you for. So not only are they paying you for your images, but they're paying you for your production, as you were talking about, for like a lot of editorial stuff. They're paying you, since they're not casting the models, they're paying you to get people, probably your friends, that then for their image. Then they're paying for all of this is supposed to be wrapped up into this styling, all these things, and then you could finish a shoot and they'd be like, well, I don't really like that these two guys had black shirts on, like, what are you doing? And you're like, well, maybe, I don't know, help someone help me. And so the thing to be careful of, and I know that like we have other things to get to, but when someone's asking you to do all these things, just be really clear about, when you introduce production or all these other things, if you're not going to pay me any more, then like the likelihood is the overall work of this is going to suffer in some degree, because a lot of social campaigns are that way. Everyone wants the feel of it being really run and gun and like guerrilla style, which is kind of a tough way to say. I don't really like when people say that. But then if the results aren't whatever they initially intended to, they seem surprised. But, for things to go well, they take time and effort. And that money, either that needs to be reflected in money or the ease. So if they're saying, okay, we ask you to do all this stuff, but we're only going to run this online for 3 weeks, then okay. But if you're asking me to do all this stuff and then you want to run it indefinitely forever, that's not going to cost you 742 cents or whatever they said.
Listen, you just play a game.
Yeah.
And the game is like the person in front of you just play the game.
Yep.
And photography, you can go to $50, to pay an assistant. I always trying to pay my assistant even if they want to work for free. It's a principle. Mm-hmm. Some people will hire intern even as a photographer. Some photographer that I know, they have like 5 interns. They don't pay anyone. It's a matter of honesty about your work and how you want to grow as well, So the money will be actually growing if you respect everybody, game, like the business of it. There is a very an extension of like every year you want to grow your business. There is a percentage, but truly you can see it. It's like the graphic. It's like going up this way, and then you have new clients coming. You don't want you lose other clients, but then there is a rejuvenation of new clients who's coming. So you have to believe in yourself. Like that works after 2 or 3 years. It works even if it's hard. And that's the implementation of getting an amazing creative team when you're producing work, not just you. So this is another story where actually the team, makeup stylists, and all the people become your friends and you're creating with. They can make money with you. So wherever they have opportunities, they can bring it to you and vice versa. So we didn't talk about that non-linear aspect of the game where everybody who's a creative can bring work and they need vision. Mm-hmm. So everybody can implement a crew of team, like when you wake up in the morning, you have a jewelry designer, a friend who's a makeup artist, another one who's doing amazing hair. And during the year, you're going to try to bring your friends and make them work with you and create together and expand together. And then the money is coming as well. Yeah,
I definitely agree on that because it does become a trickle-down effect. you're able to have your friends assist or help out or even just do like behind the scenes, but you're able to pay them. And, you know, your reputation is really on the line for every job that you do. So no matter if it's the client or the subject, like, you know, the word will get around how well you did or how poorly you did, and that's what creates longevity in your career overall.
Create the vibe. It's
Agreed.
funny to say it, but if someone who's uncomfortable have to be in front of you because a client bring it to you and you have to make it comfortable, you have to have a nice crew, you have to know about music taste, you have to know about so many things when you're a photographer around the aspect of the subject, making your subject as comfortable as you can so everybody is going to be happy and the money is going to flow as well. It's like a very an implementation of rhythm into the photography work where everything is based on I'm going to give you a great vision because I know what you want, but I can do what I love to. You see? So the both are really kind of like in unison.
I want to shift gears for a second and kind of talk about marketing yourself. You all have different personal work that appears on your website that I assume is much more dear to your heart than necessarily the commercial or editorial stuff that you're doing.
Sure.
How do you market this personal vision and get it out there? And then more generally, how do you just market yourself in this day and age when there's so many different people doing so many different things and so many different channels, whether it's Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook or in-person interviews, et cetera?
At one point, I'm convinced that the viewer are smart. So I have a lot of respect for the people who take a look of my work because I can feel, because I change, they can change their perception as well.
Yes.
So when I start my career, it was the opposite of commercial. It was like, I'm going to do 90% of my work personal. And then in the personal, I'm going to add 10% of commercial sometimes. But even if I do commercial, I'm not going to post it. So after 5 years or 6 years, people start to follow something that was very authentic. So then brands coming, Nike, you know, like celebrities like J. Cole, Swiss Beats, Chris Rock, you know, I don't remember all the names, but what I'm saying is like when they saw something was authentic, they want to have a piece of it. It's almost like, oh, can you show me what's authenticity for me? So the when and you selling yourself is, I'm not selling myself, just myself.
Yeah.
And it's the hardest part of the game because you can lose yourself doing photography because you know you can make a lot of money as well if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like at one point if you know your client and you understand the vision and you understand who you have to knock at the door to make the project. I know some people who this is the opposite. They're writing the project for creative agency and they're going knocking at the door to introduce their projects to agencies because agency needs more flow and more creative outside of the office. You see?
Yep.
So that's the way that my friends, for example, are making money, and I respect the game. I was like, wow, man, that works. Everybody has a different process, but at the end, I think the vision has to be kind of unique, you know?
Erick, you have the levitation and puddlegrams that you're known for. How do you get that concept out there?
You know what it is? I feel like, you know, following many of the main thoughts that she said is just staying true to yourself and your vision regardless of where the market goes. When I started this levitation thing, it was kind of like corny in my circle. And people would be like, okay, that's cool, you know. But it takes the persistence of you constantly achieving something for then to become a little trademark and then for it to become part of the system. The you know, and my system was commercial photography. And when I started including that vision into all my commercial work, it became something very visual. You know, like, oh, that's an Erick levitation work. Or
But
whatever.
was there like one PR event or one viral image that kind of brought attention to what you're doing, or how did you actually build the
I
audience?
think it was more persistence and then other people copying within the market. So I don't know if you've seen or if you follow footwear companies.
The only problem with the copy, it's a gift to you. When I'm saying it's a gift to you as well, is like if someone's copy you, it's a good news.
And I never
But it
look
means
at it the
you
wrong
still
way.
need to evolve in your game in different ways, which means it's like it
Exactly.
just confirm you that you have access to that level of people copying you. So if you play the game, extend to what's next. That's pretty much.
In the basic thing, I feel like I went to I go to a lot of entrepreneurial panels, and I speak at a lot of these entrepreneurial panels. And when I was just starting my photography thing, I found out this puddlegram. It was already a thing, but we kind of popularized it in New York, and then that kind of spread out to the rest of Europe. And when I was doing this levitation stuff, it was not yet popular. And I went to this conference at Google, and I sat down with this guy who was a brand marketer. And I told him, I was like, listen, how can I make my photography seem different than everyone else's? And that was my biggest question, and I feel like that's the question for everybody. And he told me, what are you doing? So I'm like, listen, I have this puddlegram thing. Economically speaking, I don't think it pays, but it looks pretty nice. So I have this other thing called levitation photography, and I'm like making all my friends jump. And he said, oh, like anything else you're like levitating? And I'm like, oh, you know what? No, but like now that I'm thinking about it, I should just throw everything in the air with my hand. And so when he told me that, it kind of sparked, like, you know what? Like, you need to find something within a subject that you like that makes, that becomes you. Obviously, we're all trying to find our vision, but the vision is ultimately found through consistency. So I guess if I would have done 10 of these photos, it still would have been forgotten and it would have gone down. And perhaps levitation would have existed now, but at a different level. But I think my persistence, and then joining forces with a couple of my friends, and I'll levitate my friends, and they'll post it, and then levitate a couple of brands, and then they'll post it. It kind of really got the word out. And once now something is on Instagram, everybody has the ability to see it. And when I curate my Instagram and the people that I follow, I curate and I follow certain people because they inspire me. I feel like that's how the majority of us use Instagram as a specifically we're artists is as a form of inspiration. And to be honest, I don't think I would have developed my passion to where it is today if it wasn't for the people around me or the people that help me co-inspire one another to do this. But honestly, I feel like stay true to your vision, persist. Look at the market value of your stuff too. That's so important. Because at times I feel like we as artists get so emotional and we're like, no, this is my baby. But then you look at the market value and it does not pay any dividends. Now you can divide it. You can put it into as he said, you can put it into the passion projects where are not going to make any money out of it, and then or you can put something in the business-related projects where you can actually capitalize on that. I was lucky enough to develop like a thing that it's you can capitalize on it. You can put any cell phone, any brand that has a small enough thing to put in my hand and levitate that. So how can you find the next thing for you? Find something that speaks you, speaks your branding, speaks the people that you're going to be working with, the companies you're going to be working with, and just be consistent at it so you can be known as a person for that specific realm of photography.
Do you guys think that you have to participate in social media nowadays to be successful as a photographer?
We have a choreography too.
Yeah. I was going to say not necessarily because a lot of my favorite photographers never really had like a huge following until they became like discovered again, But you do have to participate in something, and whether that's social media or a physical community, you just need to engage in that community. So like Erick said, I'm going to touch on that point again. Like Aundre and I were both part of Pursuit of Portraits. And, we love shooting people, and the only thing that would get engagement on social media were, like, landscape shots or, like, pretty sunsets, But we formed this community and continue to push it. And, over the year, it is persistence. It has grown since then. So social media has definitely helped, but it's really a community because before Instagram was, like, Flickr. Before Flickr was what? Blogger or something? What's that? Which one? WordPress, yeah. So that was like, the original blogs, and they all had a community and people knew about each other. So I think sometimes it's just like getting a small group together, and, numbers do speak volumes in that sense. And the more people that you have to back you up and support and also help out, I think the better off everybody is.
Aundre, are you ever concerned that there's been some valid criticism because of things like Instagram, that there's a visual sameness to the way that people shoot nowadays, especially people that have these massive followings? A lot of these landscape shots, for example, look very similar. The toning looks very similar. What sort of advice should you impart to people who are trying to make it as professional photographers?
Remember when you were in high school and there was like that one person you wanted so badly to take to prom or to ask you to prom? Remember, you had no
Yes.
people. There were no. Someone's shaking their head. No. Wow. Okay.
They were the people that were going to be
The
asked
thing
about.
that's dangerous about social is that a lot of times it's similar to like when a brand does like there've been a lot of arguments recently about how valid this Nike Colin Kaepernick thing, and there's a point to that you have to ask the question: is someone trying to associate because you're the pretty girl to prom, or are you trying to associate for that? So I think the first thing I would say is when you're starting to talk about visual sameness, each piece of work you do is different. I remember when you got that big Converse campaign that was all over the place, and I was roasting you about it. I was like, "Yo, you fancy now? You got Converse billboards, like whatever." But there was a purpose for that. That stuff looked like his stuff. When you look at Erick's stuff, it looks like this kind of like weird futuristic thing that it's very specific and clear.
Thanks, Brian.
And what I'm trying to say is that like you have to ask yourself, am I working on this for this amount of money, or is this person or brand, do I want to work with them because I think they're the cool person? Because if you're constantly chasing that, then you're going to run right out of the market. Like there's all that the joking and the hating of all those like SoundCloud rapper kids that all are covered in tattoos and have like dyed hair, right? Because a lot of them look the same and their songs sound the same. But that 15 seconds of fame is important if you want to have it. But then the question is, what are you willing to sell for it? So I think that some people feel trapped because they have to post half of what they think will do well on Instagram and half of, or maybe like 80% and then 20% of their work. And so for me, I've like never, in the traditional Instagram sense, never been like this hyper popular person. The thing that I always kind of get away with is, and you taught me this a long time ago, Carson used to go to every event that he'd go to, he'd bring this Polaroid with him and he'd take Polaroids of people and put a sticker on the back with all of his handles on it, which seems like very minor, right? But when you think about that as like a constant thing, people are going to work with you if they feel like they care about what you care about and like people matter. So for me, it's always been like every conversation that I have, having like a consultant mentality like the two of you have, and asking, or all three of you, and asking what is it that you need work-wise and how can we translate that? Because like your skill isn't as a photographer, it's as a person who can translate a vision visually.
Yep.
And to be able to do that, you need to be able to converse with the person. And that's why when there's no vision, it's maddening. Because we're just like, well, we'll do whatever you want. And you're like, well, what is it that you need? And how does that converge with what I want to do? So I think the thing that I would tell myself and tell other people is like, always remember, like, am I doing this because I think this is Nike's this hot girl and I want to be next to them? Or am I doing this because they're doing this social issue and this is important to me? And so there is a lot of visual vomit, and it can be dangerous when things look similar. But sometimes people need to do that stuff. When you have 100,000 followers, you get to do cool stuff. I wouldn't know about it, but other people get to do it, and that's really valuable. People make money that way. But that time will end. So it's what is it you actually want to do, and like constantly judging and balancing that. And if you know that you need to post a certain number of things to get to that point to get what you have to do, then do that. But be careful, because if you reduce your vision to being like other people's, then you're like slowly diminishing yourself into a market that you might not want, of like going to a country for free and shooting that.
Yeah.
Carson.
So I definitely wanted to touch on just like the thing about numbers on social, right? It's not necessarily about the numbers that you have on social media, but it is about having a network of people. So in the physical space, that's the best thing that you can have, because we do know some people who have massive followings, but then when you meet them in person, they're like very secluded or like withdrawn from a crowd. They might not actually have real friends. But it is good to have like a network. So anyone that you meet can most likely open a door for you, right? Like it's the, the 6 degrees of separation. And just by them knowing what your talents are, what your strong suits, they can refer you to other friends. And I want to say like 90% of the jobs that I've had have been through referrals of people that I've met in person.
When I talk to photographers about marketing, one of the first questions I always ask is, who is your audience? And in regards to like participation on social media, in a lot of cases, the consumers that are following you are never going to hire you, are never going to buy product, et cetera. Do you guys have a real clear sense of who your audience is and how you would interact with them and where you would interact with them?
I think now that we're living in a global society, the audience is very broad and global. I feel like for all the spectrums of being, whether you're a photographer, whether you're a model, whether you're an architect, So what I think that what's important is to see the audience or the market that you want to take within that. So if I was, if my market was, for example, the young and hip guys, for example, my market the way I market my photos would be differently. The way I shoot would be differently. It would be a lot more street style, a lot more, cool and vibe, and a lot of Supreme everywhere, So it just depends on what. I shouldn't talk. I shouldn't talk. But so it depends on what the market you're trying to achieve is. For example, if you look at my Instagram, it's very cohesive, very clean. I want to go for a little bit more of a minimalistic vibe. So that's what my market that I want to bring to the table, is. So I feel like it all depends on it's a constant communication of what the audience wants as well as what is true to you. But at the end of the day, I feel like you should always stay true to you and your vision, whether it pays dividends now or 10 years from now, as long as you believe in it. Because at times, we do have to sell ourselves and do work we don't want to do. But at the end of the day, the most thrilling work is when you work with a company that gets your vision. But how do they get, to understand that is because you understand it and you sell it so well. So it's finding something that you like and selling it so well that they can't really deny you for it.
So believe it or not, we're actually out of time, and this was the easiest moderation I've ever done in my life. I want to thank Karsten, Erick, Delphine, and Aundre so much for all your input.
Thank you guys for coming. If you have questions, you can talk to us outside, or actually, Karsten will answer every single one of them.
Catch me outside.
And look these guys up and follow them on Instagram and their websites. They're doing really, really interesting and fantastic work. Thank you, everyone, for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.